All right, for more on the two teams' biggest stars and how they help more than just their teams, I'm joined by Stan Veuger, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
So certainly a big matchup both on and off the court in terms of this battle of the brands. Let's start with LeBron. From tickets to boosting revenue, just how important is LeBron James to the economy in Cleveland?
Well, he's obviously extraordinarily important to the team. He's important to the city for the glory he brings. But he also is certainly important to business activity sort of within a close range of the stadium. So I did a study with Danny Schoeweg of Harvard. What we find is that within a mile of the stadium, when LeBron, in the years during which LeBron played for Cleveland, the number of restaurants went up by about 13%, and restaurants and bars also employed almost 25% more people.
Now that's very interesting. So in terms of the money that this brand is attached, does that travel outside of Cleveland, say when he goes to away games? So
that's less likely. There's probably a slight bump in ticket sales, but obviously you're not going to open a new restaurant or a new bar or any other kind of business just because LeBron comes and plays in your town 3 times a year. So it's a very local effect.
Now, obviously, it's a big investment, and it can be a risk to invest so much in one superstar player. And obviously, they may leave. They may end up going to another team. For example, for LeBron, how much damage did it do for Miami once he left?
Well, so LeBron, I think that most of the emotional damage he did was when he left his home state of Ohio to go to Miami in the first place. Then when he left Miami, that harmed, I think, local business activity close to the stadium a little bit. But what we saw is actually that his impact in Cleveland is much bigger than in Miami. Perhaps just because Cleveland doesn't have sort of the same competing superstar amenities that Miami may have.
So would you say that it is a risk or not so much when it comes to investing heavily in a player coming to your town?
I think it's a very difficult call. So what we see is, I think it's hard to predict how what the returns are going to look like, right? Will a team perform well? Will it not do well? Will people go to the stadium? And what we find is that sort of the direct economic effects, not how happy people are about team victories and championships won, I think those are pretty limited and restricted to areas very close to the physical stadium a star like LeBron plays in.
Now, who would you say are the other players in the league that really still have that sort of like brand pull?
Well, so my collaborator on this is from Cleveland, and he would argue that none of the other players even come close. But obviously, Steph Curry is, I think, at a similar level.
And how does he compare with LeBron?
Well, last year didn't go so well. Yeah,
Indeed.
We'll see.
Now, in terms of the Golden State Warriors, they have been very successful in the last few years after a downturn for a couple of years. What has that done economically to the area around Oracle Arena?
I think first of all, the Oakland and San Francisco have done tremendously well the last few years because of the tech industry. I think the performance of the local basketball team is relatively negligible in comparison. But of course, it's helpful for, again, for eating and drinking establishments close to the stadium itself.
So more so icing on the cake than when it comes to Oakland, being that the tech industry is already there. Now, what's your take on whether local governments should really subsidize some of these teams, being that they end up reaping a lot of the economic benefits?
So I think the fact that the effects you see are so limited to specific industries close to the stadium never make it worth it to spend $500 billion on a stadium. So if anything, I think our findings would suggest you should not do that. Then again, I think in the end, the reason why local governments spend so much money on sports teams is not purely for the economic benefit.
Now, modern-day athletes have a lot more control over their branding, their social media, other ways to really expand their reach. Does that change the leverage for some of these players when it comes to really negotiating with teams?
For sure, and we've seen in a range of sports, it goes from basketball to soccer especially, a small number of superstar players command so much of the marketing appeal of the leagues and of their teams that they have very strong bargaining positions. And LeBron, for example, is a player who, to a reasonable extent, gets to pick his fellow players on the team precisely because of that.
we certainly saw that in Miami and obviously
That's
in
right.
Cleveland. Thank you so much for your insight, Stan Veuger, resident scholar at American Enterprise Institute.